Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Future Science Talks Comedy Edition with your host, Dave Crisante. Hello! Hello! How are we all? Are we good? Are we well? Ready to hear some science? Ready to have some laughs? Fingers crossed we'll combine them both. Yeah. So it is so good to be in a room full of people who have such passion for science, passion for biology, and passion for traveling halfway around the world to get drunk with other scientists. Yeah? Yeah. Let's start tonight by giving you guys a huge round of applause for coming tonight. Massive round of applause. Yeah, thank you so much. And for all of you scientists in the room, hats off to you for spending every day trying to protect our world. We thank you for your service. Let's also give a huge round of applause to the conference organisers. What an awesome conference. Please give them a massive round of applause. Yeah. Sometimes they go, well, Dave, why do you teach or work with scientists to train them in comedy? And I like to be truthful, so I say torture. Yeah, a little bit of them, a little bit of torturing me. It's a great time. I actually got into working with scientists and training them to be more effective communicators by accident. Yeah, I started at a very young age. My father is a scientist, so I started around 6. It was a good time. Many years later, I was very privileged to work for an organization called WWF. My job was to work on threatened species. I've heard a lot about threatened species over the past few days. Threatened species like koalas, turtles, American liberals. Yeah, it's rough out there. And when I was working for WWF, I do know that they're not the most liked sometimes among conservation circles. So if it makes you feel any better, I spent the entire year I was working there every single day telling Australians that no, I did not work for the Wrestling Federation. Yeah. Now, what we have for you guys tonight is we've got a bunch of epic scientists that have been coming up here telling you a little bit, get it right, Dave, about what they do. And if while you're watching them you're feeling inspired, or you're feeling like they suck and I would be better, or you're feeling like that's terrifying and that excites me, Dave, I'm into the torture, then take a photo of this, or even better, use that QR code, put in your details. All it asks for is your email and your name, and I will get in touch with you. It does require you to log into Google. So if you don't want to do that or have the ability to do that, feel free to come and grab me after the show and have a chat with me. FYI, I look like this. Yeah. So we have these scientists. They applied for the science comedy program sometime over the past 18 months. And we've got a very rigid vetting system. We knew that they were scientists because when they applied, we went online and looked at their LinkedIn. And it said scientist. So yes. And we've been working with them. They're going to tell you some awesome stuff about what it is that they do. One thing that is going to really help us out, though, are your cheers and whoops. It is, for some of them, this is sort of, they're not professionals, put it that way, They professionally do science, and they do this. For some of them, it's their second time. All of them have previously been in a festival, comedy festival around Australia, so it was a lot of fun. But this is a bigger crowd, which means it's scarier. So one thing that's really going to help us out is if you guys are generous with your whoops, generous with your cheers, generous with extra pieces of clothing. Okay, fine. It was worth a try. And that's really going to help us out. So, without further ado, can we begin to practice? Yeah? Can we cheer? Can we keep that going? Keep that going. For our very first speaker, we have Deanna!
Hello, everyone. I am so excited to be here. Welcome. My name is Diana, like the dead princess. I am a research fellow at Monash University here in Australia. And as you can see, I am brown. I also have a funny accent, which means that I am a diversity token for this show. You're welcome. And you know what? It's all good. It actually gives me permission to make jokes about the British royalty without causing a car wreck. Yes, I did. I am a geneticist, and my research is all about how we can help endangered species not go extinct. And we do this using a genetic technique called genetic rescue, in which we find partners for endangered populations so that they don't have to mate within relatives. And trust me, as someone with a slutty, absent dad, I really care about not shagging a long-lost brother. Now, let's talk about what I think is the most crucial topic in the whole world. Tacos. You can take the Mexican out of Mexico, but never Mexico out of the Mexican. As with everything in life, there are good tacos and there are bad tacos. This is the best taco ever. Oh my God, I took this picture back home. They are delicious, chef's kiss. Translated to biologist, this is the David Attenborough of the world of tacos. Now you got it. Well, just like with tacos, when trying to save endangered populations, there are good management actions and bad management actions. My mission for today is to convince you that genetic rescue is a great management action. The equivalent of this taco right here. So, let me start my case by introducing you to this gorgeous Australian fellow, the helmeted honey eater. By the way, it is honey eater, not honey eater. I spent the whole first year of my PhD pronouncing it like that. No one told me. I figured out at a conference. Anyway, the helmeted honey eater is a cutie, isn't it? I mean, look at it. Well, it turns out that this fellow has a bit of a tragic story. Picture this. You're a helmeted honey eater, and you wake up one morning realizing that you have reached adulthood. And you are sexy AF, okay? You have the feathers, you have the beak, you look like a Ferrari. You have thousands of years of evolution behind you. You can feel the song of Mother Nature singing within. And what you really, really want to do is get laid. So you are a sexy helmeted honey eater, and you are horny. So you go to birth Tinder, obviously, and you find your sister. Oh! Your aunt. Your mom. Your niece. Your great aunt. Your grandma. Your dad. And those are your only options. Let that sink in. Those are your only options. I mean, how tragic is that? Well, it turns out that us humans have destroyed the helmeted honeyeater habitat so much that the population got super tiny. And at one point, everyone was related to one another. And they had no choice but to reproduce like that. Don't judge them, okay? They had no choice. Unlike Tasmanians. As you can imagine, unfortunate things started to happen over time. Have you ever heard of King Charles II of Spain? This is Chucky. And that is his family tree. This poor lad is the product of many generations of royals mating with one another, which made him highly inbred. Inbred. And being inbred sucks. I mean, that guy had an extra large tongue and a jaw so protruding that it had to swallow his food whole because he couldn't chew properly. French kiss, anyone? Importantly, he never had any children, despite his 2 marriages to his cousins. Sorry, wives. Well, something similar happened to the helmeted honeyeater. We looked at their genes and we found that the most inbred birds produce 90% fewer offspring than the least inbred birds. And that for a population that is so tiny, huge problem. So, this is where management actions come in. See, what happens a lot in conservation is that an endangered species is so precious that managers want to keep it isolated and pure because they think that will keep it safe. But that is a terrible management action. That is the Guzman and Gomez or Taco Bell taco. No bueno. Seriously, guys, how can you eat that? You know that every time you eat one of those, a Mexican grandma drops dead, right? Anyway, keeping an inbred population isolated is the worst thing you can do because it only makes the problem worse. What you gotta do is the complete opposite: genetic rescue. And genetic rescue is like an exchange program in which students can go for a semester to another country to to study. And boy, oh boy, don't those studies get wild. Don't ask me how I know that. Sorry, babe, it was before I met you. That's my husband right there. He's brown too. He's not my brother, okay? I checked. So the way to go is do genetic rescue. Facilitate things so that our lovely endangered populations can get laid, and not with their sisters, but with new exotic mates. So, who was the lucky suitor for the helmeted honeyeater? A bird from Gippsland, which is a different populations, but they are the same species. They can reproduce without problems, like Australians and Americans. Technically. So, how did sexy time go? In a nutshell, we put helmeted honeyeaters and Gippslanders together. We turned off the light, lit some candles, played some romantic music, and they were down to breed. I mean, look at the girl. She's having fun. Perhaps I was pronouncing the name correctly? Just saying. Well, these birds, these pairs, produced mixed babies that are completely healthy. And they are doing even better than inbred babies. And that, amigos, is another reason why diversity is cool. Before I finish, I would like to deliver some wonderful news. Thanks to the work of many people and many institutions dedicated to their conservation, the helmeted honeyeater population is finally growing. And we are starting to establish not only a second, but a third population. So, say yes to genetic rescue, say yes to the next best taco ever, and say yes to helping endangered species get laid. Thank you.
How good? Keep the applause going for our next speaker. We have Lizzie!
Hello, everyone. My name is Lizzie, and I am an entomologist. Yes, I knew I would love this crowd straight off. So this means that I study the creepy crawlies that many people love to hate. This is the venomous predators, the spineless bottom feeders, the absolutely blood-sucking parasites. Ew. No. Not those kind of creepy crawlies. No, I get to study these weird and wonderful creatures, the invertebrates. These are insects and spiders, and there's millions of them. And in the spirit of bringing my whole self to work, I'd also like to share that when I'm not flouncing around as a fancy entomologist, living my best life, I am the mum to two quiet, well-behaved, angelic little boys. Just kidding, they're little shits. To tell you what, I actually prefer spending time with my bugs than I do with my children. Now, you might not particularly like creepy crawlies, but if you met my kids, I think you'd feel the same. Because compared to looking after my children, looking after venomous wasps or spiders is just so calm and relaxing, you know? They're quiet, they're well behaved, they always eat their flies. And And seriously, I think that I would rather milk the venom from a funnel web than brush my 5-year-old's teeth one more time. I'm way less likely to get bitten as well. But the real reason why I love bugs more than my children is that they do really important jobs. The bugs, not my children. They can't even put the dishes in the sink. But basically, these critters get a bad rap. If we didn't have them, if they didn't exist, neither would we. Let's start talking about worms. Worms, slaters, cockroaches, these are the animals that live in our soil. And they're really important. They're called detritivores. They break down, they decompose the things in our soils. And this includes organic wastes. We'd literally be in a pretty shitty situation if we didn't have critters like these. Next, let's talk about bees. Everyone knows what bees do, right? What do bees do? They pollinate. Well done, everyone. But honeybees like this, I have to tell you, they're overrated. Honeybees are somebody gets it. Honeybees are basically the mediocre white man of the invertebrate world. They have one job. People come and pat them on the back and say, "You're doing such a great job." Yeah. And then they give them all of the research funding. Yeah. It's true. Yeah. But sure, save the bees. You know who the really hard workers are? Spiders. They're the female postdocs. Yeah. They're the ones that keep everything going in the background. Now, the jobs that spiders do is particularly important. They eat the pests. These are the pests that would usually be out there eating our crops, spreading diseases, destroying our homes. Spiders are basically out there solving world hunger. Yeah. Go spiders! Yeah. And in fact, spiders eat up to 800 million tons of insects every year. That's equivalent to the weight of all humans in the world. Imagine if we could actually get spiders to eat all the humans. I'm pretty sure I know some entomologists who are trying that. And I can think of one test subject, or one pest, who I'd like to put first in line for that experiment. Now, even if you can't love bugs for their really important jobs and for their potential tech bro eating abilities, perhaps you can love them because they're really important food for a whole lot of other animals. These cute and cuddly animals, the mammals, the birds, I think that's what they are, isn't it? People seem to like these guys. I'm not entirely sure why. They're even more useless than bees, but, it's what people like. So, my research looks at how to improve the biodiversity of insects and spiders in cities. I want them to look like this, including the giant spider. Yeah, a girl can dream, can't she? Basically, I want there to be more spiders in cities than there are white SUVs pulling jet skis down the Perth freeway on a Friday afternoon. Yep. Yes, I'm from Perth. Yes, we have a problem. No, it's not the spiders. But the really big problem is that cities aren't actually particularly good places for insects sometimes. When we build a city, we change everything about the environment. We change the temperature, the rainfall, the food availability, the habitat. And it means that a lot of species, a lot of these amazing invertebrates can't actually survive there very well, which is why we need to start thinking about how we design our cities, not just for humans, but for invertebrates as well. Now, you might be thinking, Lizzie, we already have too many cockroaches. What are you doing? Are you really a scientist? Thanks for asking. Yes, I am. But really, it's not about just cockroaches. It's about biodiversity. It's bringing back lots and lots of different types of invertebrates into our cities and all having their important jobs. But let's face it, even cockroaches are not so bad. At least they pick up the crumbs that I drop in the kitchen, unlike the other pests in my house. My children. So, when I'm looking at how to design cities for invertebrates, I need to understand what's already living there, which kind of species are able to survive in these environments, what kind of insects are already there. This means I spend a lot of time in urban parks and gardens kind of really closely inspecting the ground, working out what's there. And you would not believe the things that I find. Perhaps you would believe me. I learnt way more about the habits of the local teenagers than I wanted to. And it totally reinforced my opinion that bugs are better than humans. You do not see bugs leaving used condoms on park benches. But no, seriously, you wouldn't believe what I found. The absolutely amazing species, thousands and thousands of different species, are living right under our noses that we may never have seen before. The diversity of invertebrates that can live in cities is fantastic, and we should be encouraging them. Unfortunately, in order to get more bugs in cities, for my research, I have to work with the one thing that entomologists fear more than anything else in the entire world: people. Yeah. And this is because people keep killing my darling bugs. They spray them completely unnecessarily sometimes. Most of the guys in this picture, they're the good guys. These are good bugs. So it turns out the best way to improve biodiversity of invertebrates in cities is to stop killing them. Yeah, I know. It took me like a whole PhD to work that out. Yeah. So, in order to save the world, in order to increase the number of invertebrates in cities, we need to get rid of all the happy families who are killing them. Yes. Yeah? Awesome, everyone's on board with that. It's not usually the response I get to that. No. What we need to do is, for the love of God, just to stop killing anything that has more than 4 legs. Let's give that a try. So, in addition to reducing the amount of pesticides that we use in cities, there are a couple of other things that we can all be doing to encourage these wonderful critters in our cities. I'm going to talk to you about them briefly today. The first one is to have less lawn. There are no useful contributing members of our society that get anything out of lawns. No. It just encourages the children to play ball games and things. Instead, let's have more native gardens. This is space to grow and play for some really useful members of our societies who are actually going to contribute and work hard. These little guys. Thank you. Yeah. Next, provide some water. Not this kind of water. That's completely wasteful. The only people who use pools like this are delinquents and layabouts. Yeah, like those kids, right? We need ponds like this and more native plants. This is going to encourage those hard workers who actually remove the pests rather than acting like them. Finally, let's think about building some habitat. People seem to have this habit of building this awful habitat for their offspring. It's plastic, it's ugly, it encourages the children again, and they're loud and they're messy. No, let's make habitat for these little darlings. These are the good bees. Let's give them some space to live and play. They'll help you out in the garden, and they won't be loud about it. These are the kids we need in our gardens. So, in summary, what we need in our cities is less of these pests and more of these wonderful creatures. And I hope you're all on board to help me build better cities by getting rid of one pest at a time. Thank you.
And making our way to the stage, we have our next speaker. We have Ali.
Hello, ICCB. Hello, thank you very much. I'm so excited to be here tonight. Thank you for coming. My name is Ali Chauvenet. I'm a quantitative ecologist, and I'm here. Thank you. Yes, it's the best job. And I'm here to tell you that you are paying too much for therapy. I am French. Yeah, thank you. Which means that I've got lots of opinions about food, but I'm also allowed to be rude about it. So, to start with, you cannot put cheese in croissants. Do not put ice cubes in your wine. And please, jelly is not dessert. In fact, it's not even food. That said, I did fall in love with the Australians' culture, the cafe culture, and your beautiful national parks. Yes, they're beautiful. A quantitative ecologist is a hybrid between a stats nerd and a tree hugger. I am basically Blinky Bill's nerdy European cousin. It's a very Australian joke. And I love stats so much that I once designed an experiment to see if nagging my ex about picking up his dirty socks off the floor would actually increase his picking up rate. It did not. No. It did, however, speed up the rate at which we approached our breakup. In Australia, when I tell people that going to green places is good for their mental health, people get super excited. Until I tell them that I'm in parks, and then they get really worried about my mental health, but don't worry, Lizzie, don't worry. I like noisy children as little as everybody else. When I say parks, I actually mean this. Yes. And when I tell my friends, you guys should go out in nature to get some mental health benefits, they say, duh, Ali, that's because 99% of them are at this conference. Okay. But there's still some cool things about my work, such as the fact that I can tell you how much mental well-being improvement you can get from one single visit to parks. So the next time you're trying to convince your friends, not those here, you know, the real ones outside, to go out for a walk for you in nature, you can tell them the exact percentage improvement they're going to get from it. Try not to get too smug pretending to be a data nerd like me. And why do I need you to tell your friends about the well-being benefits of going into nature is that we know that 3 in 10 Australians do not visit parks at all. Now, if we had tigers in our national parks, I'd understand. Is anybody here from Nepal or Bangladesh or India? Yes? Range states for tigers, now you are excused. But in the Australian context, okay, and I did some math, little calculator, and you know, I'm a data person, so turns out that just at this conference, about 250 people are paying too much for therapy. So is this one thing you're gonna take home from tonight? Is that you only need to go once in a while for a walk in nature, and even once actually to get some benefits. In fact, it doesn't have to be a bushwalk. You can just look around you. I don't mean whole one, not quite literally, especially if you brought wine with ice cubes in it. Yes. I don't know if Rochelle is here. I said I was allowed to call out people. No. What I mean is the beautiful nature we are surrounded with. Celebrity spotting on this slide. Thank you. There's lots of pictures of you bird watching online, so I just grabbed one. All right, so when you next time you're outside and you're walking, or you're walking to your car, or you're walking to the train station, or enjoying beautiful South Bank, I want you to think about the fact that there is no other therapy office where you can also be drunk. Except at my friend's Jan, of course, which during my breakup provided me with as much wine as support. Wine lover over there. You may be wondering at this stage how I am able to measure the exact mental well-being improvement that people get from visiting nature. Well, we started by designing a survey, and we asked questions of people about who they are, their green places visit habits, Bunnings excluded, very important, and how they are feeling. And we asked 20,000 Australians those questions. And by Australians, in this case I mean Victorians, and a few Queenslanders. I think we can all agree this represents the whole spectrum of Australians here. It's quite representative, isn't it? Victorians were paid in coffee, of course. And who can guess what Queenslanders were paid in? Beer. Forex. Yeah, that's right. That's what we did. Thank you. Yeah, it's a good, thank you. Queenslanders. But what we were really interested in, the actual research question, was can we find a link between park visits and mental well-being, regardless of people's age, gender, and education, and other things that make people different from each other? To do that, we used some models, not that kind, the really sexy kind, aka statistical models. Yes. What did we find? Well, if you have a higher income and you're in a relationship and if you exercise, you do have higher mental well-being. But why would you go to the gym when you can actually go out in a park for that? What about green places? Well, going to urban parks is good for your mental well-being. You get an improvement by visiting your local parks, but if you go to more natural places, like forests, like national parks, you get 4 times the benefit. And then we also worked with an economist to work out the economic value of these mental health benefits. Now you might be wondering, why go there? Like, isn't the mental health benefit enough, Ali? Well, for us Australians here, do you know how much a therapy session costs? The recommended price is $311 for a 45 to 60 minute session. Again, put on my stats, nerd cap on and calculated that at $6.90 per minute, per single minute. That's a lot of money. Or a lot of coffee. That's the price, that's the average cost of an oat milk flat white on the Gold Coast where I live. Now, mental health is super important. It's what allows you to have a fulfilling life, enjoy your family, or at least spend time with them. Okay, so we all sometimes need help maintaining it. And the stats say that 1 in 5 Australians are currently experiencing some kind of mental health issue, and that's actually quite comparable globally. So it's not just in Australia. And in fact, 1 in 2 of us will eventually experience mental health issues in our lifetime. Okay, so needing help is normal. So I'm on a mission to convince everyone to go into nature for their mental well-being, starting with you. So unfortunately, you will not be allowed to leave this room until I've convinced you. I am aware of the irony of keeping you locked inside when I'm telling you to go out for a walk. But the economic value of parks turned out is quite high, and we calculated that for people that visit parks, it's worth about $10,000 of free therapy for each visitor. That is a lot of coffee, guys. Yeah. We are so lucky here in Southeast Queensland. It's a beautiful place to live. We're sandwiched between national parks and the ocean. And this is preaching to the converted, of course, but really need to look after this beautiful nature. For its own value, of course, biodiversity, we might even see some koalas, but also because we get a lot out of nature that is not quite currently accounted for. And a 3% increase in mental well-being from going into nature might not sound like a lot. But I think I've demonstrated quite clearly that it's worth a lot of coffees. Or for our Queenslanders, of course, a lot of beer. Okay, 4x. So, please make use of nature. While you are waiting, when you're on a wait list to see a therapist, go out in nature and get some free and easy to access mental health benefits. You can go alone, you can go with your friends, you can listen to music or the birds singing. I love feeling the wind on my face. You can have a picnic Okay, but just one thing to remember. Do not ever, and I mean ever, put cheese inside your croissants. Thank you.
I'm going to get fit doing this show. And keep the applause going for our next speaker. We have Laws!
Hello, everyone. Hello. My name is Luz. Yes, that's a real name. I'm a PhD student in mathematics. I study here in Brisbane at QUT, and my project is about using math to make better decisions for Antarctica's biosecurity. And so I've been living in Brisbane for about 3 years now, and seriously, this is the coldest winter I've experienced so far. This is how I was dressing up yesterday. When people meet me, it can be a little bit confusing because you can take a good look. I have a Colombian face. And I also have a French accent. And that's simply because I'm both. So when I tell people that I'm Colombian, they usually say, like Shakira. It's so much better when they say Shakira rather than Escobar. And when I tell people that I'm French, they imagine that my life looks like this. And so clearly, my parents gave me all the tools and all the heritage I needed to be a very glamorous person, which I did not exploit when I decided to be a mathematician. So I know that when you hear that this talk is going to be about math, it might cause you to feel this type of emotions. But as a mathematician, I never really figured what an emotion was. So I'm just going to carry on with my talk. So I use mathematics to make better decisions for Antarctica's biosecurity. I'm a little bit like the border force of Antarctica, just with less racism. And this role is extremely important because Antarctica is a very fragile ecosystem and any little disturbance could have devastating consequences. The last thing that we want is to accidentally bring a few rats over and see our penguin colonies look like this. Aww. So my role is to advise these people. These people are the Antarctic Treaty System. They're the people who can actually make the decisions for Antarctica's biosecurity. And what I do is tell them, well, you should really be cleaning these containers. When I think about making biosecurity decisions, it's actually a little bit like when you're getting ready for a date. By the way, just in case there are other mathematicians in the room, a date is when you meet with someone else in person and that person is actually interested in you and not just in your homework. This has happened to people I know. So let's pretend I'm getting ready for a date. This is very fictional, okay? With my crush, Ryan. There are so many things that we can do to get ready for a date, right? I could start by choosing my clothes, or cleaning my shoes, or you know how you're a bit crazy at the beginning of relationships, and I could do a no surgery to fix that snoring problem I have. I must confess, I've never done any of this because I'm more of a homework type of person. But my dad has. And that is a real story. My dad, this is really my dad, when he was starting to date my mom, I know, she pulls. She's 65, and she looks younger than me. People don't ask me, is this your sister? They say, is this your daughter? Like, anyway, so my dad, when he started dating my mom, he was very embarrassed of his snoring problem. And so he decided to do this very, very expensive nose surgery to stop snoring. And it was really difficult for him. The recovery was terrible. He had to drink his food through a straw for months. He couldn't talk. And when this all was over, he asked my mom, did the surgery work? Did I stop snoring? And then she said, yeah, you stopped snoring through your nose. Now you do this. This is a real story. So clearly, my dad's strategy to dating worked, because otherwise I wouldn't be here. But he probably didn't need to put all this money into this surgery that didn't really work. And the reason I'm telling this story is because the same thing could be happening with Antarctica's biosecurity. We might be investing a lot of money and putting a lot of efforts, but at some stage we might hit diminishing returns. And that's what happened to my dad. So, to be a bit more precise, when we send scientists to Antarctica from Australia, they usually depart from Hobart. And, oh, are you the single person here from Hobart? So, if you don't know, that's the coldest place in Australia. They're crazy. They're going from the coldest place in Australia to the coldest place on Earth. And they go to this research station that's called Casey. And I imagine that going to Antarctica would look like this. I would be hugging my crush, drinking hot chocolate. Not at all. It looks like that. It's very sad. And so when scientists go to Antarctica, they're susceptible of bringing nasty things that we would like to keep out of Antarctica. Things like rats that might be hiding in containers, or soils that under people's boots, or politicians who want to build military bases. Fortunately, there are a lot of things that we can do to prevent this from happening. We can do the cleaning of containers, some visual inspections, not the visual inspections I was hoping to do, but that's okay. Or we could do some scent detection dogs. This is a real scent detection dog. Isn't he cute? No need to be a German Shepherd. So I am a mathematician. I almost know nothing about Antarctica. So I need to collaborate with other people. And so I'm doing this project with my friend Zach. Zach is an ecologist, so way cooler than mathematicians. He looks like this. And the truth is, Zach and I, well, we really complement each other because he knows about Antarctica and I can do the math, so we're a good team. But we're not really experts in Antarctica's logistics. We don't know that much, actually. So we asked some help from experts. And so we designed a survey to ask them, out of all these biosecurity measures that we could be taking, which ones are the most cost efficient? How much do they cost? How long do they take to do? How efficient do you think they are? And this is where I come in, the mathematician. My role is to translate all this information into an equation, like here. I admit it. For non-mathematicians, this is what I see when I look at an equation. I might be a mathematician, but I'm still French. So, what this equation is telling us is that we want to minimize the cost while ensuring a high level of protection of Antarctica. But we could look at this problem from a different angle, like here. Again, I see this. And here, we want to maximize the protection while keeping our budget, like, not exceeding. The thing is with these equations is that they're very difficult to solve by hand. And by solving, I mean finding the biosecurity measures that satisfy all these constraints. And so what I do is that I put them into my computer. So apparently I haven't closed my browser. I'll do it right now. Okay. So I put my equations into my computer, and the computer then tells me a list of zeros and ones. Then I, the human, can interpret that, well, what are the biosecurity measures that we should take? And this is amazing. And after this, well, Zach and I were really happy, and we went out to party. But unfortunately, this is not the end of the project. We still need to look back to these people and tell them, well, this is what we found. These are the biosecurity measures you should take so you don't lose too much money. This is how much you would save. And this is what I'm going to be doing for the next few months. So a few takeaway messages for me. I hope I've convinced you that math can be really helpful to solve real-world problems. Always close your browser when you're sharing screens. And Ryan, if you need help with your homework, you know how you can call. Thank you very much.
How good. And right now, if you're thinking, I want to do this, just remember, take a photo, get on the QR code, and you can be one of these guys too. Without further ado, let's make a huge round of applause for our next speaker. We have Show!
Hello, everyone. It is so good to be here. I'm going to tell you about my PhD working on these goofy birds. My name is Shoshana, but just call me Sho. Shoshana is way too long for an Australian name. And to be even more authentic, it should end in O. Servo. Ambo. Sho. And I am a big bird nerd. A birdo, you could say. The driving passion in my life is Australia's birds. I love birds so much that my favourite smell is the aroma of a sewage treatment works. There is nothing birds love more than a good poo pond. Therefore, there is nothing I love more than a good poo pond. And I have been to poo ponds all across the country. This is the Melbourne poo pond. Ooh. The Alice Spring poo ponds. Ah. And the Canberra poo ponds. And it turns out the poo pond is an Australian institution. Elsewhere in the world, they have the audacity to lock up their poo in these buildings where we can't see it. Meanwhile, in Australia, we put it out in big ponds for everyone to look at, so you can keep the Eiffel Tower, the Colosseum. We have the Werribee Sewage Treatment Works, where it is my God-given right to be ankle-deep in birds, shit, and bird shit. I'm doing my PhD on the bush stone curlew, which is not a bush, it is not a stone, and it is not even a curlew, which is a different type of bird, and trust me, birdwatchers get really antsy about stuff like that. Birdwatchers are, how do I put this delicately? Birdwatching is a hobby for the kind of people that like making lists. So you better not confuse these birds. So bush stone curlew, you might have seen these guys in Brisbane. They're nocturnal, quite tall, about knee-high, and during the day, they roost on the ground where they do this magic invisibility. They have awesome camouflage. Even when I put tiny GPS backpacks on them, they can be really hard to find. But you're really smart. I reckon you could outsmart a curlew. Should we give it a go? In this photo, there is not one, but 3 bushstone curlews. Big bird, knee high, you can do it. Did you find them? There they are, 1, 2, 3. Should we try again? In this photo, there are 4 bushstone curlews. Little family, cluster of 3, 1 on the side. All right, lucky last time. In this photo, there are 5 bushstone curlews. You've had so much practice by now. I'm just fucking with you. There's no curlews in that picture. So the thing you should know about these birds is they are spooky. They stand statue still with big yellow eyes. But the spookiest thing about them is their call. They sound like someone getting murdered. I once had to take a curlew home overnight so it could see a vet the next day. At that point in time, I lived in an apartment, so I kept it in this wildlife tent in my lounge room. Next morning, I didn't have a carrier to take it back out in, so I put it in a Woolworths shopping bag. With a zip, I'm not crazy. I got in the elevator of the apartment building, start going down, and of course it stops, and this little old lady gets in, so I'm like, hello, off to do my shopping. Elevator keeps going down a few floors when my bag starts going, woo, woo. I thought she was going to die of fright. And my neighbour wasn't the only one frightened by these birds. Every year in Queensland, tourists call the police going, help, there's someone getting murdered. The police pick up the phone, they note the accent on the other end, and they go, so, where are you? That campsite? Nah, mate, it's just a bird. Which fits perfectly into the grand national pastime, which is fucking with tourists. Bushstone curlews are pretty common in the north of Australia. You'll see them in Brisbane, Cairns, Darwin. They're so common, they regularly make the news for staring at their own reflection. But where I'm from, in the south of Australia, it's a completely different story. They are endangered in New South Wales and critically endangered in Victoria. There's as few as 100 left, kind of like inner city coalition seats, which is an understudied species. Consider that for your next grant application. They're endangered because of habitat loss, and invasive red foxes eat their eggs and chicks. And while some things should go extinct, others shouldn't. But the good news is we don't have to accept local extinction. Reintroduction is the process of bringing back things that have gone locally extinct. I do a lot of my work in a fenced sanctuary called Mulligan's Flat. It's fenced, and so it excludes foxes and cats. One of the coolest things about Mulligan's Flat is it's located right near the nation's capital. But that's a bit of a low bar. Canberra is just a country town cosplaying as a city. At Mulligan's Flat, we've reintroduced species that had been extinct on mainland Australia, such as the eastern quoll, shout out Dr. Belinda Wilson, and the eastern bettong. Across Australia, we do this a lot, actually. Australia has global expertise in reintroduction, but mostly for cute mammals. It's kind of like how the cute kids get more attention from teachers, even though we pretend they don't. And birds deserve conservation opportunities too. Bushstone curlews went extinct in the ACT in the 1970s, and the process to bring them back at Mulligan's Flat started in 2014. But reintroductions are really difficult. They involve moving animals big distances at huge expense, and it takes many years of work to get them to succeed. So why bother? Why do we care? The first reason is those populations add extra steps between those species and total extinction. Insurance babies are really important. As an aside, all of the curlews at Mulligan's Flat turned out to be ginger. And when you bring back those species, you also return the important ecosystem functions that they play. In the case of curlews, they're a mesopredator. They eat stuff and get eaten. On the topic of curlew diets, I love curlew poo. It is always full of crunchy, shiny beetle bits. I'm a minimalist in most of my life, except when it comes to poo. I am a poo hoarder. I put so many scat samples in my personal freezer at home. My fiance complained he couldn't find his Magnum ice creams. Apparently, it's a health hazard, and I have a problem. The other reason you should care is species are intrinsically valuable. They should exist. And another thing that happens when species have been locally extinct for decades or even centuries is we lose them from our collective memory. And I think a story that explains this really well happened while we were monitoring eastern quolls. We set up a trap network and baited the traps with delicious sardines to catch all the quolls. I was out one night, it was about 4 o'clock in the morning, leaning over the tray of the ute, moments away from microchipping a quoll when I saw these lights in the distance that were getting closer and closer. I blink and realize it's 3 police officers with tasers out running towards us. Turns out what had happened is they'd been in this epic Grand Theft Auto car chase, but lost their suspect and then saw our lights up in the reserve. I was like, sorry, we're just scientists working on the quolls. They were really bummed they didn't get to use the tasers. And as they turned to leave, one of the officers gets out a radio and goes, nothing here, they're just catching some moles. And that stuck with me. We forgot the species we used to have, which is a tragedy. Nearly as tragic as thinking there was a bird in this photo. The good news is the reintroduction at Mulligan's Flat has been really successful. Some of the original birds are now great-grandparents, and we've expanded the project to 2 new sites in Victoria, where we're hoping to at least double the population in the state, which I think is awesome, because everybody deserves to hear the blood-curdling shriek of curlews on dusk. And who knows, one day they might even serenade my local poo ponds. Thank you so much.
And keep the applause going for our very last speaker. Last but not least, we have Sean!
Hey everyone, how we doing? Great, you're not asleep, so this is already better than my average lecture. Hi everyone, my name is Sean Buckley, and a friend once described me as the dumbest smart person they know. It's true. If you're wondering why I'm so dumb, I pay a lot of money for this haircut. I even choose to be a little bit of a redhead. I'm from Edith Cowan University, and I'm a specialist in conservation genetics, which is really just a fancy way of saying I try to stop cousins from having babies. I look at the DNA of our endangered animals and try to figure out if they're doing all right. And this is really important because in Australia, we like to win. We're currently kicking ass at letting our cool native species go extinct. So I'm hoping we can try and be a world leader in saving them instead. But when a lot of people meet me for the first time, Joe, and they see my mullet, they think more bogan than biologist. As if I can't be both. But the biggest benefit of having a mullet is that I never get sunburnt on the back of my neck. It definitely counts as PPE, I've checked. Otherwise, as you can tell by my complexion, I'd probably have to dress up like this. And I'd never hear the end of the ridicule from my husband. My field of research is really all about trying to make sure we have good diversity in the gene pool of our wildlife so that they can be strong, robust, attractive, So the opposite of our politicians, really. Ugh, Jesus. Sorry, I didn't tell you this was a horror show. When we don't maintain genetic diversity in our wildlife, lots of bad things can happen. Some species can develop serious diseases. They might lose the ability to adapt to climate change. They might even grow extra limbs. We call all of these things together inbreeding depression, which is apparently not just the feeling you get when you visit Logan on holiday. For our international audience, Logan is a short trip away from here, and I highly recommend visiting if you want to feel better about the place where you've come from. I love conservation so much that I'm basically a species kleptomaniac. Often, when I'm about to go in the field, my colleagues will remove tennis balls from my backpack so I won't pretend they're Pokeballs. But sometimes people ask me, Sean, what's your favourite species to work with? You must have a favourite. And I think it's a bit like choosing a favourite child. There's a really obvious answer, but it's not polite to say it. But like a lot of things in life, it's my first true love. Oh, shit, my husband's here. I hope he didn't see that. Actually, here it is. It's a freshwater fish. Yeah, right? It's a freshwater fish that I've helped to breed and put back in parts of Australia where it used to thrive. So let me show you how we're ensuring there's good genetic diversity in our Australian wildlife and how we can use this science to bring back our ecosystems. This little guy is the southern pygmy perch, a small species once found all across a lot of southeast Australia. But when I talk to people about it, I used to call it the who gives a fuck fish, because that's what most people would say when I told them about it. But as you might have guessed, I give a fuck. Turns out a whole bunch of other people give a fuck too. In the town of Bendigo in Victoria, the local community looked at their waterways and realised some things were missing. A collection of 6 really cool fish which had disappeared since the gold rush. Ironically, none of them were goldfish. Yeah, right, correct response. They named these lost fish the Magnificent Six, which is my favourite Marvel movie. So working with their local government, environmental managers, and some fish hobbyists, we came up with a plan to bring the Magnificent Six back to Bendigo, starting with, you guessed it, the southern pygmy perch. Now you might be thinking before tonight, how hard can it be to move some fish? Something like that, right? Pretty much. Well, it's a bit more complicated than you might realise. First, you need to find some fish to actually move. You need to make sure they have a good home to move into. You might even need to do some captive breeding to get enough individuals to start a population. And yes, of course, you need to look at their genetics as well. So a bunch of us, including our genetics lab, joined forces to help bring them back. Volunteers from the local community started off by helping to restore some sites to release the fish into. They picked 3 different places, including a dog park in town. At each site, volunteers planted vegetation and woody debris to make a nice home for them, and also made sure to remove any shopping trolleys. You know things suck when even the fish are getting better housing support than millennials. I just bought a house, that hurt a little bit. We helped them find some good creeks to source the fish from, and we picked 3 different creeks in 2 different rivers in the area. And the community went out and caught over 100 wild fish. Our previous genetic work showed that fish from those 2 rivers were genetically different to one another, so we decided to breed them separately. We put fish from one river, so you can see here in the green, in one tank, and the fish from both creeks of the other river, here in pink, in a different tank to keep them separate. Kind of like Romeo and Juliet. And only a little bit slimier. To help set up the captive breeding program, the team worked with a private aquarium business in town. We were like Tinder for fishes. Only the caviar comes after the date, not before it. We let this wild-caught fish breed for a single generation and took all of the offspring. At each of those release sites, we released 300 fish from across both of those breeding lines. Thankfully, we paid for same-day delivery. We came back a year later to see how those populations were doing and to take a look at their genetics, from the captive offspring and the wild parents to the recaptured fish a year later. We wanted to check how well the program maintained genetic diversity and whether more genetics should be added from somebody else. We were watching everything they did. It's kind of like keeping up with the Kardashians. Yeah, I got more bad puns. Hold on. And we found a few surprises. The first thing we noticed was that even though 2 of those creeks flowed into the same river, their fish were completely genetically different to one another. Since they weren't separated in the breeding program, we found a whole bunch of hybridy fish. It doesn't stop there. They weren't the only hybrids. Some of the fish from one river managed to sneak into the tank for the other river and created even more hybrids. I guess Australia's strict border policy rules don't apply everywhere. When we looked at which fish survived the best in those restored ponds, we actually found way more of these hybrids than we had originally released. And that was reflected in their genetic diversity as well. Those new populations had a really healthy and diverse gene pool, even though captive breeding programs often lose a little bit over time. The good genetic diversity of those populations is actually owed to those hybrids. They're the poodle crosses of the fish world. Better, cuter, much less inbred. Overall, the program was so successful that those thriving hybrids have since been used to establish even more populations of southern pygmy perch in the area. Thousands of fish have been taken from those 3 sites to help establish new populations. I feel like Saruman with his army of Uruk-hai, ready to conquer the world, save the world, I guess. I'm so proud of this story for so many different reasons. Not only was it a great outcome for these poor, underappreciated fish, but it also showed how effective conservation can be when we all work together. Even something as complicated as conservation genetics can be helped by anyone, even you. Just like with our children though, it's really important not to play favourites. All of our amazing wildlife are special and important, and I definitely don't have a favourite. Not at all. Thank you so much. You've been a wonderful audience.